Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivadadari Gopijana Vallabha Girivadadari Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha, Govinda Radha, Govinda Radhe. Jaya Goranitai, 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 Jaya Goranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privajakacharya Asto Tartatashi Shrimad Nitya Leela Pravista Om His Divine Grace Shila Abhay Charanar Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ISKCON's BBT Founder Acharya Jagat Guru Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Grantaraja Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Deva Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastapareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. We're reading from the Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2. We're beginning from the last verse, number 42 of the 5th chapter, entitled The Cause of All Causes. As this verse has a one-sentence purport, I will just read the Sanskrit, the verse, and the short purport myself, and we will together read the Sanskrit for verse number 1 of chapter 6, which is entitled Purusha Shukta Confirmed. Burloka kalpita pabhyam burvaloka syanabiti nabitaha svarloka kalpito murdna itiva loka kalpana. Others may divide the whole planetary system into 3 divisions, namely the lower planetary systems on the legs up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems svarloka from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. Purport: the 3 divisions of the complete planetary systems are here mentioned. 14 are imagined by others, and that is also explained. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd canto, 5th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled The Cause of All Causes. Chapter 6, Purusha Shukta Confirmed. Text number 1. Please repeat. Brahma uvacha vacham paner mukam kshetram chandasam sapta datava havya kavya amritananam jiva sarva rasasya cha brahmovacha vacham vanirmukham kshetram chandasam saptadattava havya kavyamritananam jiva sarva rasasya cha brahmovacha vacham vanirmukham setram chandasam saptadattava havya kavyamritananam jiva sarva rasasya cha brahmovacha vacham vanirmukham setram chandasam saptadattava havya kavyamritananam jiva sarva rasasya cha. Hare Krishna. Ladies, Brahmovacha, Lord Brahma said, Vacham, of the voice, Vane, of fire, Mukham, the mouth, Setram, the generating center, Chandasam, of the Vedic hymns, such as Gayatri, Sapta, 7, Dattava, skin and 6 other layers, Havya Kavya, offerings for the demigods and the forefathers, Amrita, food for human beings, Ananam, of all sorts of foodstuffs, Jiva, the tongue, Sarva, all, Rasasya, of all delicacies, Cha, also, Translation. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice and the controlling deity of fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people. Please repeat. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people. Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's BBT founder Acharya, Jagat Guru, Patita Pavana, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The opulences of the universal form of the Lord are described herein. It is said that his mouth is the generating center of all kinds of voices, and its controlling deity is the fire demigod, and his skin and other 6 layers of bodily construction are the representative generating centers of the 7 kinds of Vedic hymns, like the Gayatri. Gayatri is the beginning of all Vedic mantras and is explained in the 1st volume of Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Since the generating centers are the different parts of the universal form of the Lord, and since the form of the Lord is transcendental to the material creation, it is to be understood that the voice, the tongue, the skin, etc., suggest that the Lord in his transcendental form is not without them. The material voice, or the energy of taking in foodstuff, is generated originally from the Lord. Such actions are but perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. The transcendental situation is not without spiritual variegatedness. In the spiritual world, all the perverted forms of material variegatedness are fully represented in their original spiritual identity. The only difference is that material activities are contaminated by the 3 modes of material nature, whereas the potencies in the spiritual world are all pure because they are engaged in the unalloyed, transcendental, loving service of the Lord. In the spiritual world, the Lord is the sublime enjoyer of everything. And the living entities there are all engaged in his transcendental loving service without any contamination of the modes of material nature. The activities in the spiritual world are without any of the inebrieties of the material world, but there is no question of impersonal voidness on the spiritual platform as suggested by the impersonalists. Devotional service is defined in the Narada Pancharatra as follows. Sarvopadi Vanirmuktam Tatpratvena Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchate. Originally, since all the senses are produced by the Lord's reservoir of senses, the sensual activities of the material world are to be purified by the process of devotional service, and thus the perfection of life can be attained simply by purifying the present position of our material activities. And the purifying process begins from the stage of being liberated from the conception of different designations. Every living entity is engaged in some sort of service, either for the self, or for the family, or for the society, country, etc. But unfortunately, all such activities are rendered due to material attachment. The attachments of the material world may be simply changed to the service of the Lord, and thus the treatment of being freed from material attachment begins automatically. The process of liberation is therefore easier through devotional service than by any other methods. For in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, which is entitled Devotional Service, verse number 5, it is said that one is subjected to various kinds of tribulations if one is impersonally attached. Kleso dekitaraste sham avyaktasya chetasam. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshulmitham Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapidam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Jayatam Surjo Pangor Mama Mandamater Gati Matsarvasva Padambojo Radha Madana Mohano Dibyad Brindaranya Kalpa Jumada Śrīmad Ratnagara Singha-sanasto Śrīmad Radha Shilagovinda Devo Pistalabi Sevyamano Smarami Shriman Rasarasarambi Bamsi Bhatatastita Karshan Venu Svanar Gopir Gopinata Shri Estuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Brahmo Vacha, Vacham Vaner Mukam Saitram, Chandasam Saptadattava, Avya Kavyam Ritananam, Jiva Sarva Rasasya Cha. Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusha, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers. and the general mass of people. So these chapters here in the second canto constitute Shukadeva Goswami's first teachings to Maharaj Parikshit, and it's described, Srila Prabhupada, that in the common saying that the daughter-in-law is instructed through the daughter. The devotee doesn't have to be taught anything, but for the sake of setting an example for the people to follow, the Lord instructs the devotee, as Krishna most famously and triumphantly instructed Arjuna. Arjuna was seemingly in perplexity on the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra, being faced with having to kill practically everyone of his contemporaries, respectful elders, spiritual masters, brothers, cousins, so many, and gave many good logical arguments as to why the fight would be bad and why it's wrong to engage in it. But Krishna, once Arjuna realized that friendly talks wasn't getting anywhere, surrendered and accepted, begged, practically speaking, Krishna to act as his spiritual master. Now I have lost all composure due to miserly weakness, and I'm simply asking you to instruct me as my spiritual master. Asochanam vasochastam pragnavadam chivasa say, while speaking learned words, you're actually speaking like a fool, because those who are actually wise don't lament for temporary material situations. So it's mentioned here, the devotee has to become free from designations. All these souls existed in the past, they exist at present, and they will continue to exist in the future. The soul is not slain at the time of death. So Prabhupada remarks in one place, I believe in the first canto, that violence executed under the order of the Lord is by far superior to so-called non-violence on the mundane platform. So a very important part of the process of purification, we tend, especially in Kali Yuga, to underestimate actually how much purification is required to bring us back to our original position of complete Krishna consciousness. And those who are grossly guilty of this miscalculation are called Prakriti Sahajiyas, because they want to understand, without the requisite purification, practically at once, the Supreme Lord's potential internal potencies and activities, the topmost form of devotional service exchanged between the Supreme Lord and his internal Shaktis. So, especially for them and for everyone, one must understand how the Lord is working, or how the Lord's potencies are going about systematically, orderly in this material world. This automatically is, as it is a form of purification, hence devotional service, will afford one the proper understanding, which, knowledge and vairagya, knowledge and renunciation simultaneously. One, Prabhupada says, one can test for oneself if one is actually engaging in devotional service, which means to please the Lord. This very nice little description of, as it's also described in the Brahma Samhita, the transcendental autocrat. In the spiritual world, the Lord is the sublime enjoyer of everything. So if Krishna is actually pleased, then automatically your material desires are eradicated, nil, zero. Because desire is not to be eradicated, it has to be transferred from wanting to so-calledly please one's material designative identity, Prabhupada mentions. They want to please even more nobly their society, country, etc., family. But unfortunately, all such services are rendered due to material attachment. So here in this verse, this is a very wonderful insight on how to meditate on the Lord's personality. His mouth is the generating center of the voice. So just anything else that we have a particular talent, Prabhupada writes in the first canto, when Arjuna came back and reported to Maharaj Yudhishthira that Krishna had left the planet, and who's now bereft of his amazing powers that he had when he was in the direct association of Krishna, overcoming all the different obstacles that were put to him and his family, primarily by the cunning Duryodhan and company, and what to speak of the great challenge of fighting great generals like Dronacharya, Bhishma Dev on the Battle of Kurukshetra. And Arjuna was seemingly defeated in his simply protecting the queens of Krishna by some ignoble cowherd men. Of course, the inner story of that was Krishna appearing himself in that way. But anyway, I am the same Arjuna. I have the same Gandiva bow, but without Krishna, I'm powerless. So Prabhupada writes, one should not be puffed up by borrowed plumes. We see how, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would do this. He would choose one of his disciples who was not so musically great, who didn't have the best singing voice. Even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself was reported to not be what, on a common level would be called a great singer. He would choose a disciple who, to sing instead of someone who was like very beautiful singing voice. In the Krishna Balaram Mandir, there was one disciple who started a Guru Puja in Srila Prabhupada's presence with a great, flourish and all this kind of musical fanfare and techniques, and Prabhupada just stopped it, before he could really get going. Great embarrassment, and chose a Gurukul boy who was by, considerable talent calculation kind of oafish, but he started chanting with such enthusiasm, but with no musical ability. But Prabhupada loved it and was smiling very much. So the idea is that whatever we have, it's given to us by the Lord for a certain period of time and can be taken away. Of course, in the spiritual world, everyone has a superlative level of perfection in all sensory ability and various talents. That is because of their pure devotional service. They are demonstrating and exhibiting all of these things under the supreme guidance of Daivi Shakti, Mahatmanastu Mamparta, Daivim Prakritim Ashrita. The great souls will not be bewildered there under the direct guidance of the internal potency, Daivi Shakti. And so therefore, because there's no duality in the spiritual world between one's so-called exhibited talents and one's actual spiritual qualification and one's motivation, that one's beautiful display is based upon the beauty of one's soul. That's quite the difference here in the material world, where it's practically the opposite most of the time. And if there's any relief from that frustration, it's only in association of devotees, because devotees, they strive to bring the two together as one through sincere attempt at purifying the senses, purifying the motivation. The skin and other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers, and the general mass of people. Krishna says, if one offers me a leaf, a fruit, a flower, I will accept it. So there's a plethora of information as to what type of foodstuffs Krishna likes, and especially in the temples of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, temples of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, there is very detailed information as to what Krishna likes. Prabhupada was visiting the Chicago temple in one of his summer visits and was given the deity's prasad as part of his, and Prabhupada rang the bell and asked for the cook, who had cooked, to come, and Prabhupada pointed to the sweet and asked, "What is this?" "It's a daily sweet, Srila Prabhupada." "I know that, but what is it?" "It's peanut butter burfi." And Prabhupada said, "I've given you so many sweets that Krishna likes." Oh, it was a carob. He said, "Carob is for hippies. Do not offer carob to the deities." So this is an example. And there are exalted literatures that describe the many different types of what to speak of sweets, so many different foodstuffs, both in Krishna Lila and what to speak of Chaitanya Lila. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, just very simply, when I take the shock, a type of spinach that Lord Chaitanya was very fond of, I consider my life worthwhile. Because Lord Chaitanya liked it. Or on Prabhupada's appearance day, we like to offer kachoris, because Prabhupada, especially as a youth, was very fond of kachoris. He was always keeping many kachoris in his pockets, like someone wants to keep a lot of money in their pocket and think that their life is good because they have a lot of money. So. It is to be understood from this verse that the tongue, the skin, etc. suggest that the Lord in his transcendental form is not without them. The material voice, or the energy of talking, or of taking in foodstuff, is generated originally from the Lord. Such actions are but perverted reflections of the original reservoirs. The transcendental situation is not without spiritual variegatedness. So Prabhupada develops in his purport and directs us to Bhagavad Gita, 12th chapter, where Prabhupada says, the question of Arjuna is very, very important. Understanding the difference between the impersonalist and the personalist and their respective paths, who's better and what's easier, or what's more favorable and recommended. Which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Krishna has explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist who engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unwhole. And in the 7th chapter, the Lord spoke of the living entities being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then and again in the 8th chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the 6th chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, he who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahman Jyoti. What is it? Misery loves company, right? So if you're doing something that's not productive or self-destructive or just plain wrong, and you're attached to it, okay, go off in a corner and do your thing, but don't, promote, with a big advertising campaign that other people should also, take a hammer and hit their head with it. That's, And so, factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Good question. Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. So Arjuna, he's asking Krishna to withdraw his universal form, and not just even the four-handed form of Narayan was sufficient to pacify Arjuna, but again seeing the two-armed form of Krishna, who he adored and loved as his friend, Parthasarthi. Arjuna was completely pacified. This important question asked by Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities. This is the potency of worshiping and meditating always on Krishna's personal form, that whatever you do, this is the real meaning of Jivan Mukta, liberated even in this body, even in this life, it's spiritual. Just like Srila Prabhupada. Anything Srila Prabhupada did, what to speak of being spiritual, it was on the highest level of spontaneous love of Godhead. And devotees were just so infatuated with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada arrived in Kennedy Airport here in New York City in the spring of 1973, and there's the memoir of Rasagna Devi Dasi, who was one of the premier Vaikuntha players, actors and actresses. She herself had much experience in the world of drama and acting before coming to Krishna consciousness, so it was natural that she would engage that in the Lord's service. One accolade that she had was playing for Prabhupada's pleasure the starring role in the kidnapping of Rukmini, and Prabhupada was so much impressed that he said, "This is our program, that we have kirtan, katha, prasad, and drama." He wanted that. He wanted plays. And Rukmini, she was the best. So she's meeting Prabhupada for the first time. She's a new devotee in this airport arrival, and she was just like mesmerized how Prabhupada, all of these people, so much, worship and adoration and onlookers, non-devotees, press reporters, and hundreds of people. And Prabhupada was completely unfazed, not self-conscious, and he, had such a regal bearing, and she said from an acting point of view, he like stole the show. It was just like, I just couldn't take my eyes off him, and he took the chalice of water and the waiters put it in, and just completely unhurried and took his time with everyone. It was amazing. No material activities, and why are there no material activities? Because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. So these are things that what's listed here, these are things that Prabhupada had done, especially before becoming, before ISKCON had manifested in a very, very big way and he became World Acharya. But it's interesting to note that these are things that Prabhupada has done simply in his life, but these are things that we all do also. Simple things. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam, or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. We should have Sashi in here to hear this. Stays up all night washing the pots. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. So those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immobile, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. After many births, they come to realize Vasudeva is all, they surrender. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna directly, otherwise there is no perfect realization. Often there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him. For the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. And verse 5, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied, especially in Kali Yuga, because the bodily conception of life and the pushing of the senses is very strong. We see Prabodhananda Saraswati in his Chaitanya Chandramrita. He's praying to Lord Chaitanya. It is now the age of Kali, and my senses, they're very strong. Alas, Lord Chaitanya, where will I go? What will I do if you do not give your mercy to me? The process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is easier and it is natural. There's one glorification of Her Majesty Srimati Radharani by Lord Shiva in the Radha Kripa Kataksharad Stotram, where she is the goddess of all that is I forget the Sanskrit, all that is natural and spontaneous. And that is one of important reason why Krishna is so attracted and attached to Srimati Radharani, because of that natural spontaneity, topmost platform, the reservoir of all spontaneity for all pure devotees. Easier and natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the bhakti yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable, because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. So we change our bodily conception of life from this material body to Krishna's bodily conception of life, and completely reverse all polarities and achieve our spiritual identity. This is the verse where Prabhupada gives the example of the post office box as the authorized box to put the letter in to get to one's destination, desired destination for the mail, even if it's thousands of miles away. So Krishna appears as the Archa Vigraha. He's not the deity is not a material element. One who thinks like that is actually a candidate for hellish life. He accepts as the Archa Vigraha the services of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man in conditional life. So, for a devotee, there's no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But those who are following the impersonal way to spiritualization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads, and they have to learn the language, understand the non-perceptual feelings, and realize all these processes. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Lord directly. It is advised, therefore, one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization, because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. Any questions or comments? I won't, yes.
I just had a quick comment because I like how you were reading different purports from the Bhagavad Gita. That part where Prabhupada was saying that sometimes the devotee chants, sometimes he takes prasadam.
Loud.
Sometimes the devotee chants or reads, and then he lists like different activities that the devotee does.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of one letter Prabhupada wrote to Krishna Maharaj, and he was saying that he was telling Krishna Maharaj that if you're having any difficulty staying inspired, do as I am doing. Sometimes I chant, sometimes I read, sometimes I play musical instruments and sing bhajans, sometimes I speak on the philosophy, and in this way I stay enthusiastic.
Right. Variegated variety. Or what is necessary to be done. You know, sometimes you see something that's just obvious that has to be done, and less realized devotees, they're like, oh, I've been told to do this, and I can't do that. Whereas like the house is burning down, and we better get a bucket of water and put the fire out. Well, no, I gotta, so what is it? Devotional service is dynamic activity. And on the platform of spontaneous love of God, the Lord instructs the devotee what to do next. Doing the needful. And Prabhupada in Bombay, he's speaking on Kapila Dev, Shiksha to his mother Devahuti. That's made a very wonderful book, Teachings of Lord Kapila. Yes, you go off to the secluded place and live in the Himalayas and no disturbance from the rampant rat race and the mundane people, and see absolutely no one who's engaged in sinful life. It's very, very good. But far superior those who enter into the world and get rough and tussled and undergo so much difficulty and disturbance and have to tolerate so much for the sake of saving as many fallen conditioned souls as possible. Krishna says he is a superior sadhu. So you have to make a lot of decisions if you like New York City, right? Land of decision making, right? Yeah. All right, any other questions? Krishna Kripa, could you contribute something from your unlimited wealth of wisdom and realization?
I can just repeat what I've heard from grateful. So I was hearing a tape by Ranjana Swami speaking in Mayapur, and he was talking about it's important. Ranjana Swami was saying in a lecture in Mayapur, it's important to understand the greatness of God, because then we'll realize that we're God's servant, and that our position is to please Him. And if we have an attitude of pleasing Him, then we're open to have a more intimate relationship with Him. Otherwise, we want to have, like the Sajis, have some idea of an intimate relationship with God, but we haven't understood that our position is to please Him. It doesn't work.
Right. And Prabhupada says in one place, people say that God is great, but how is He great? Here are the details. All this information is required to be firmly fixed in pure devotional service. I believe that's in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Thank you very much. So armed with yoga, we go out. Today is the 40th anniversary of the departure of John Lennon, and there might be like a big gathering at the Strawberry Fields at 72nd Street. Might be a interesting or lucrative opportunity to distribute chant Be Happies. George Harrison fans are more favorable than John Lennon fans. That's what I've experienced over the years. But anyway, just a note. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Grantaraj Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Bol.